Welcome to this video in which I will play a sample turn of Swords Around the Throne, my upcoming two-player game of the Napoleonic Wars on a grand strategic scale, which is launching on the GameCrafter.com's crowd-sale platform on January 5th, 2022. I am using the Vassal module for online play that I created for convenience. What you see here is the setup for 1812. Those two large blue and red windows on the left show the faction sets for France and the coalition. The first thing the players do in the preparation phase is to select 10 to 15 cards from their faction sets for their decks based on the countries that they control. Then they draw half of their decks into their hands, which are shown in those smaller blue and red windows. The last step of the preparation phase is to plan actions for the upcoming rounds of the action phase by placing 2 cards down in the case of France, and usually, but not always, 3 cards down in the case of the coalition. In Vassal, both sets of planned action cards are shown in this window with the yellow backgrounds, and the cards that are down are shown face up to their players, but the card back displayed in the top left. When playing the physical game, you place the cards by the slots on your side of the board. Then the action phase of 6 rounds starts. The first thing to do is to reveal the actions planned for the first round, a Strength 2 campaign card for France and a Strength 2 diplomacy card for the coalition. The coalition must take the first player turn as recorded by showing the coalition player turn marker in the player turn number 1 box. With their Strength 2 diplomacy card, the coalition targets French ally Austria to try and turn it into a neutral country. Thus, they need a final score of 3 to succeed, and they start with a score of 2, which is the strength of their planned action card. However, France plays a French opportunity card as a Strength 2 diplomacy card, reducing the score back to 0. The coalition could play a diplomacy card to increase the score, but the best they could do is bring it back to 2, which would not be enough, and so they give up, and Austria remains a French ally. Now the coalition draws 1 card, which is a Strength 1 Russian diplomacy card, and then they plan a new action by placing a card face down, a Strength 1 Russian campaign card in this case, in the rightmost empty slot of their planned action row, which corresponds to the 4th round. Now, in player turn number 2, France uses their Strength 2 campaign card to move Napoleon from Paris to Westphalia, then Berlin, where he picks up the Westphalian army, and finally to Poland, where he assumes command of a force of 3 armies. Then France draws 1 card, which is a Strength 1 French diplomacy card, and they plan a new action, a Strength 1 French campaign card, in this case for the 3rd round. The first round is over, and the actions planned for the 2nd round are revealed, a Strength 1 French campaign card and a Strength 1 British insurgency card. Again, the coalition must take the first player turn of the ongoing round, which is player turn number 3. The coalition targets French Dominion Prussia and needs a score of 1 to turn it into a quagmire, and they start with a score of 1, the strength of their insurgency card. But France plays a Strength 1 insurgency card of their own, which reduces the score to 0. Since the coalition does not have any insurgency card in their hand, they cannot support their action, and it fails. Prussia remains a French dominion. So the coalition draws a card, which in this case is a Strength 2 British diplomacy card, and plans a new action for the 5th round, and they choose to plan the very card that they just drew. In player turn number 4, France uses their Strength 1 French campaign card to move Napoleon and his force of 3 armies from Poland to Byelorussia, seeking to engage Bagration. The coalition does not believe that Bagration can win, and they discard their Strength 2 Russian campaign card to allow Bagration to evade unharmed and join Kutuzov's command in Moscow. France then draws a card, at least should have, because I forgot to. Then France plans a new action for the 4th round, in this case, a Strength 1 French diplomacy card. The 2nd round is over, and the actions planned for the 3rd round are now revealed, a Strength 1 French campaign card and a Strength 2 British campaign card. This time, France must take the first player turn of the third round, which is player turn number 5. France decides to use their campaign card to move Napoleon and his force of 3 armies to Moscow, where Kutuzov awaits him with 2 armies and has no option to evade. Finally, it's time for combat. France's initial combat score is 4, 3 for the 3 armies, plus 1 for Napoleon's offensive bonus. It is then reduced to 1 by the 2 Russian armies and Kutuzov's defensive benefit. The coalition, however, has no card to play in reaction to the French attack, and therefore can no longer reduce the score, and so France has won. However, the French player decides to play their opportunity card as a strength 1 campaign card to bring the score back up to 2, which is the final score. This results in both Russian armies being eliminated, and their markers are placed on the player turn track. They won't be able to be mustered again until player turn number 8. As for Kutuzov, he flees to Lithuania, rejoining Tolly's army. Napoleon is now master of Moscow, but Russia won't surrender because he needs to hold St. Petersburg too. He draws a French card, a Strength 2 French diplomacy card, and then plans a new action for the 5th round, a Strength 1 Prussian campaign card. In player turn number 6, the coalition uses their Strength 2 British campaign card to muster Bennigsen in St. Petersburg and move Kutuzov with Tolly there from Lithuania. The coalition then draws a card, the Strength 1 Russian opportunity card, and plans a new action for the 6th round, their mixed strength British opportunity card. The 3rd round is now over. Between the 3rd and the 4th round, both players draw the remainders of their decks into their hands. Here is the French hand, and here is the coalition hand. Now the action planned for the 4th round are revealed. A Strength 1 French diplomacy card and a Strength 1 Russian campaign card. France must take the first player turn of the 4th round, which is player turn number 7. With their Strength 1 French diplomacy card, they target French ally Austria to try and lock its French ally status for the remainder of the turn. They need a final score of 1 and start with a score of 1, the strength of their planned diplomacy card. But the coalition plays their Strength 1 Russian diplomacy card in reaction to bring the score back to 0. Fortunately for France, they can play Metternich, a Strength 1 Austrian diplomacy card in support of their action for a final and successful score of 1. Austria is now a locked French ally until the end of the turn. There are no more cards to be drawn because the decks are empty, so France only has to plan their next action for the 6th round, a Strength 2 French campaign card. In player turn number 8, the coalition uses their Strength 1 Russian campaign card to muster Bagration in St. Petersburg. There is no card to draw and no further action to plan for the coalition since the deck is empty and they have already planned an action for the 6th round, so it's on to revealing the actions planned for the 5th round. A Strength 1 Prussian campaign card for France and a Strength 2 British diplomacy card for the coalition. The coalition must take the first player turn of the 5th round, which is player turn number 9. They choose to use their Strength 2 diplomacy card to target neutral Sweden and attempt to turn it into a locked coalition member. They only need a score of 1 to succeed and start with a score of 2, which is the strength of their planned diplomacy card. Now France happens to have a Strength 2 French diplomacy card and plays it in reaction to reduce the score back to 0, but the coalition can then play their own British opportunity card as a Strength 1 diplomacy card to bring it back up to 1, which is the final and again successful score, so Sweden becomes a locked coalition member. In player turn number 10, France uses their Strength 1 Prussian campaign card to muster York in Poland. Note that Poniatowski is also a Prussian corps, rules-wise, but because Prussia is a French dominion, France can muster both Prussian armies. It is now the final round. Planned actions are revealed, a Strength 2 French campaign card for France and a mixed strength British opportunity card for the coalition. The coalition has priority and will take the first player turn of the 6th round, i.e. player turn number 11, regardless of how they use their opportunity card. Now, let's just get a look at both hands of card. This is the French hand, and this is the coalition hand. Of course, neither players know what the other holds, though logic can inform guesses. The coalition player decides to use their opportunity card as a strength 1 insurgency card to target French dominant Prussia again in an attempt to turn it into a quagmire and place an insurgency marker in Berlin. They need a final score of 1 to succeed and have an initial score of 1 thanks to their planned action card. York's army in Poland, while adjacent to Berlin, does not reduce the score because it is Prussian and they won't interfere. And the army of Italy in Galicia is too far. Immediately the French react with their strength 2 French insurgency card, bringing the score down to -1. But the coalition plays their own strength 2 British insurgency card to bring it back up to 1, which is the final and successful score. Prussia's insurgents turn it into a quagmire, York and Poniatowski's armies disintegrate. Can France still pull off the Russian campaign? Sadly for France, the answer is no, at least not in player turn number 12. France knows that they cannot win the battle for St. Petersburg, so instead they muster Schwarzenberg in Galicia and move him and the army of Italy to Byelorussia in order to secure Napoleon's line of supply back to Vienna. The 1812 action phase is over, the winter quarters phase begin. Neither side has won the game, although the French came close to winning the game if it were the 1812 scenario only. And no army is facing winter attrition. Austria, Russia, and Sweden are now unlocked, and it is time for 1813. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. The commentary took about 12 minutes. That gives you a sense of how long it takes to play a turn. Obviously, no time was left here for thinking, so you could expect the turn probably to last a little longer, maybe 15 minutes on average once you know the rules of the game. So if you play the maximum number of turns, 11, you are up to about 165 minutes, which would be about 2.5 hours for a full game. Obviously, you can play short scenarios and play them in as little as 15 minutes. I will leave a link to the GameCrafter.com's website under the video. Thanks again, and so long.